Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss some major new revelations about the extent to which Boris Johnson tried to pressure Sue Gray into leaving out quite a few details from her Partygate report and how he and other senior officials seem to have succeeded in some parts. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So last night I saw someone from the Sunday Times tweeting, oh, there's going to be a big Partygate story in the paper the next day. So I checked it out this morning. There's an article with some very detailed and specific accounts of the efforts that Boris Johnson and his supporters went to in order to edit as much out of the Gray report as they could. Now, when it comes to reading articles like this, it's always worth bearing in mind, so what is the political bias of the outlet? It'd be great if we could just say that our mainstream media wasn't politically biased, but that's ridiculous. Both the Times and the Sunday Times are right-wing, pro-conservative. They're not, however, a fan of Boris Johnson. It's aimed at what you might call middle-class professionals who are conservatives with a small c. So the very people who are turning their backs on the Conservative Party and looking towards the Liberal Democrats right now. It's curious that in this article it did make mention of the two by-elections coming up and that the Conservatives were basically abandoning all hope of retaining their safe seat in Devon to the Lib Dems. Of the two, it should be Wakefield that's the toughest to retain, but it has to be said that this traditional core of Tory support were turning away from the party before the scandals, which began last autumn. It's got nothing to do with Partygate. That's just made it worse. It's really Boris Johnson's policies and what the Conservative Party have become, which is not the Conservative Party that a lot of these people recognise. So basically what I'm saying is that when a paper like this reports on something that will be uncomfortable for Boris Johnson, there are two things you can say to add context to the article. First is, they do have people close to a lot of Tory MPs. It supports the party. And so a lot of MPs will say what they really think to them. And that will include some senior members of the party. Secondly, it will lay on any pressure on Boris Johnson good and thick because they want him gone. And it was certainly laid on thick here. I'll ignore the embellishment. There's like one part where it goes in detail about how Boris Johnson joked about having his dog killed to keep it quiet. Or how they had to change the time of senior staff meetings because Boris Johnson was too lazy to get his arse out of bed and downstairs. Remember, he lives in this pretty much the same building where he works. Couldn't be asked to get down for 8:30. But anyway, go to the key points. The first is that Boris Johnson put Sue Gray under immense pressure to leave certain things out of her report. Now, we'd heard this already throughout the week, hadn't we? It started off last week with it emerging that Boris Johnson had a meeting with Sue Gray. Then he and his client journalists in the Daily Mail tried to suggest it was Sue Gray that called for that meeting. And then Downing Street had to rein back on that and admit that no, they'd called for it. But the thing to pick out here is that Johnson was supposed to be seeing the report for the first time on the day it was published last Wednesday. But if he was pressuring her to remove certain elements, he must have seen extracts of it beforehand. And this article claims that bits of the report were flying around number 10 the day before. The main changes that some senior officials wanted was basically not naming them and also to leave out Carrie Johnson. Sue Gray apparently said that she'd have to be instructed to do so. So instructed means Secretary of State has to tell me, has to order me. You know, that's what it means. Stephen Barclay in this case. He'd have to order her to make the changes. Now, remember what I've said before. Although Sue Gray may well have conducted this inquiry professionally, she certainly has the respect of people across the political spectrum. She's not independent. She's a Whitehall civil servant and as such under the direct management of a cabinet minister. Stephen Barclay, who is her cabinet minister, could have ordered any changes to her report that he thought fit. And she would have to comply. However, it would also have to go on record that he'd done so he didn't want to do that. But this is why the investigation should have been carried out independently. In theory, the ideal people to have done that would have been the police. But they had to be dragged kicking and screaming and refused to investigate anything outside of the internal Sue Gray investigation. You know, so farcical did the situation become that we had people questioning, why was the infamous ABBA party never covered? You know, we know a bit about this from media reports. We know it happened. No one's denying it happened. Why wasn't it investigated? It was by far and away the worst of the parties reported in the media. Sue Gray said she didn't cover it because she was about to, she says, but then the police began their investigation. So you go to the police, well, why didn't you investigate it there? They say they didn't investigate it because Sue Gray hadn't investigated it. Oh, we're only investigating what she investigated. What's the point in that? But in terms of what was reported, we know that some of the pressure certainly worked. Sue Gray wanted to name a number of senior officials. The most senior official, Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, was largely left out of the report. He's only mentioned a few times, and not really in relation to his role in organising the parties, save for a mention of an email he sent out inviting people to Boris Johnson's birthday party. Now, according to the Sunday Times, half of the senior leaders that Gray thought should be publicly named were not. Seems to be partly down to legal pressure from lawyers. Ironically, this may not do them any good. Remember how junior staff fined by the police were reported to have been upset that the managers who told them to attend these parties got away with it themselves? It hit morale quite badly. They were looking for the Gray report to rebalance things, set the record straight. For quite a few managers, it hasn't done that, has it? The resentment will now fester and make it more likely that further damaging revelations will be leaked to the press. So instead of these managers having their role covered in a balanced professional report by Sue Gray, they've now risked it having been revealed in the most sensational way imaginable, embellished by the British tabloids. Well done. If it were me, I think I'd rather Gray covered it and be done with it. Take my medicine and be done. But the most interesting reveal in the article for me was the suggestion that the Gray report was supposed to contain WhatsApp messages and emails about the notorious party which involved a karaoke machine at a time when not only were parties banned, but so was singing. It's a high-risk activity for spreading the virus, of course. So apparently everyone went nuts and full pressure was brought to bear to stop the publication of those messages. I suspect because it would have given clear evidence that people knew that they were breaking the law. Maybe would have even implicated some people close to Johnson. But whatever was in these messages, there was clearly a determination to stop them seeing the light of day. And it worked. So I'm guessing there will come a time when they do see the light of day, courtesy of an article in the Mirror or something. But what it means is that as damaging as both the Gray reports were as published, there were major elements removed. So now let's consider this from the point of view of a Tory MP considering whether or not to submit their confidence letter. Because that's what's important about this. It's like very interesting learning about these new revelations. What does it actually change? Well, put yourselves in the shoes of a Tory MP. We're already up to 20 odd who have publicly stated that they've put their letters in. It needs to be 54. It was pointed out in this Sunday Times article as well that when Theresa May faced her challenge, there were as many letters from people who didn't publicly say they'd done it as those who did. So if that's the case here, you can almost double it. So it might well be that the number is actually pretty close already and could be reached when Parliament returns after this week. Bear in mind, the process for these letters is they go to the office of Sir Graham Brady, who is the chair of their parliamentary committee. But his office is in Parliament. At the moment, MPs aren't sitting. They're back in their constituencies. So after next week, they go back. He may well find himself with a load of letters. A few other MPs may put them in that week as well. And if it's not quite reached the week after next, there's potentially 2 by-election losses to sharpen some focus as well. Like, imagine if both of the by-elections in a few weeks were very big losses for the Conservatives. Because you would imagine for the calculation, it depends on how badly they're lost. And I know we've had this, will they, won't they, for 6 months now. Every time it's like, oh, there's a few more MPs might put the letters in. And it's getting tiring. But you just get a feeling that we may be close to a tipping point. Now, imagine you are an MP, Tory MP, mulling this over. You read an article claiming that the Sue Gray report left things out due to massive pressure. If it were me, I'd immediately be thinking 3 things. First, that the Gray report was very damaging already. We know that. So what the forced edits were must be really bad. You know, why didn't you just get it over and done with? That's what I'd be thinking. What must have been cut out must be horrendous. Secondly, there will be junior staff who have this horrendous evidence that are not happy they've had to carry the can while their managers have walked away from this unscathed. The potential for damaging leaks in the future will be enormous. Third, If those damaging leaks come at a really crucial time, like say the next general election, it could collapse the party's strategy entirely and consign them not just to a loss, but a devastating defeat. Now, with all that in mind, I'd be much more likely to conclude that not only does Johnson need to go before the next election, but that the sooner the better. Of course, I don't know what these waverers are really thinking. It might well be that this threshold is not reached anytime soon. But from my point of view, I mean, let them do what they like, Johnson or not. We're still stuck with having to sit through another 2.5 years of Tory destruction before anything can be done about it. There is political advantage in Boris Johnson continuing to lead them. But if I was a Tory MP, I would be thinking this could get a whole lot worse yet. Because what Tory MPs who are sticking by Johnson at the moment are desperately hoping for is that he can somehow ride it out and somehow not get embroiled in any more scandals that come to light. That's a vain hope if there's a lot more damaging information that was cut out of the report that could easily be leaked by even a very junior member of staff. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Maybe even click the join button if you're interested in memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.